Hey guys, Jake here with the Hook and Vice Fly Company. So I'm treating some of my own bucktails that I got from local shops and stuff. Just wanted to kind of show you guys how I do that. So some of you may have already seen the first step, which was basically getting them in a box from the butcher shop, meat shop, whatever, the deer cutter. Get a box of tails. A lot of them will come with big hunks of meat on the back where they cut them off the back of the deer. The first step is I just take a hatchet and lop off where I want to start my tail. And you'll basically come out with something like this. You'll see the tailbone in there. And basically our next step after we take all those big chunks of meat off is going to be taking the tailbone out. I'll kind of show you what the tailbone looks like here. So that's a tailbone of a deer. So obviously bigger at the bottom, get skinny at the top. There's a little bit of a trick to get these out once you get them to the top, and we'll kind of go over that. But this is something I started doing last year. Did quite a bit of research on it just because, you know, costs of bucktails add up. If you're spending $7+ especially if you want premium bucktail with big long fibers, you're going to be paying top dollar for that. I have a couple that are done here that you can see are finished, and I'm measuring some like 6, 7, 8-inch fibers on some of these big bucktails. And then there's pretty much all the other ones are, 3 to 5 inches, which is great for a lot of flies. So basically I'm going to show you how to take out the tailbone and clean it up a little bit. So that's the next step after we lop all that meat off, like I just did yesterday, is we're going to take the tailbone out and kind of clean up the base here to get these ready to go. Check that thing out. That thing is massive. So you're going to want a sharp knife, obviously, for this. And basically the way we're going to cut is sharp side of your blade up, cutting along the tailbone, going with the fibers. You don't want to cut against the hair, because what that's going to do is you'll probably end up cutting more hair off of the tail, and we really want to keep as much hair on here as possible, obviously, because we really want to utilize as much of this as possible for our flies. So I'm going to cut along the tailbone like this with my blade up. Like I said, that's going to keep my blade sharp, and I'm going to be able to ride the non-cutting edge right on top of that tailbone. So all you have to do is get it started right along here. It's okay to, cut like this like you normally would, just to get a spot started on top here. And then, sorry if the table's shaking, but once you get that started, basically what you're going to do is hold it down on the table, and you're going to take your thumb and index finger and basically splay all those hairs off to either side of your tailbone and just ride this blade up along the tailbone until you get to the tip. So I'm just going to do that right now, just to get this started for you guys. This is a pretty quick process as far as, ride along the tailbone goes. There is some fine kind of skinning work that goes along with this. So I usually try and go about halfway up, and then I'll show you what I do next. So as I ride that blade up this bucktail, I'll show you what it's going to start to look like here. But try and stay in the center of the tailbone as best as you can. And try not to cut yourself, obviously. So it's going to start to look like this. As you go up, with your knife, you're just gonna wanna start peeling some of this skin and connective tissue back away from your tailbone. And what I do normally is I'll really do a good job skinning at the base of the tailbone, and then you can basically peel your tailbone back out of back away from the skin up to where you finish cutting. And you just want to make sure you do that slow so you don't go through the hide. And just be careful while you're skinning this too, because obviously we don't want to go through the hide here. That's what's going to hold the hair in. So you want to keep all that intact, all the hide and stuff. And then you can kind of clean any nasty stuff away from that you may have later on. So you can see here, that's the tailbone. I've kind of cleared away from both sides of it. And I can grab right onto that tailbone. I can start pulling it away from the actual hide of the deer tail. You can see, it's just starting to pull away. All that's just connective tissue. And you can start to see the back of the hide here where those hairs are in the hide. And you don't want to compromise this because that's what's holding all your bucktail in. And you can see, I basically just pulled out, I don't know, 4 inches or so of tailbone. And just be real careful when you're doing that, because if you pull hair through this hide, you'll have holes throughout it, and it's just going to make the curing process a little bit more difficult for you. So I'm going to finish cutting up this bucktail up towards the end of it, end of the tailbone. And I'm just going to continue cleaning along the sides of that tailbone to release that skin away from the tailbone. And I'm just using a sharp, my sharp pocket knife. It's a Gerber. You can use whatever you're comfortable with. It just make sure it's sharp. So this is really the hardest part of cleaning your bucktails, and it's the most tedious part, but it's well worth it in the long run. So I just cut down the bucktail a little bit farther. You can start to see what that's starting to look like. So we're just pulling that tailbone out as I cut flesh away from the tailbone as we keep going towards the tip. And things can get a little bit dicey towards the tip of the tail because the bone starts to get really skinny. So just take your time, watch your fingers, don't cut yourself. This usually takes me about anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, really, depending on the size of the tail, and that's per tail. I'll try and get you guys a close-up here of how it kind of looks when I'm cutting down, and then I can just take some of that and just start pulling it away from your tail again. And that's really the process that you're just going to keep repeating, is cutting flesh and fat and stuff away from either side of your tailbone, and then just peeling it away from your hide. So once you get, I'm going to say probably half an inch or so, maybe a little bit less of half an inch away from where you can feel the tip of the tailbone stop. You're going to want to make sure you clear all the flesh away from the sides of the tailbone. And you're going to want to make sure that your tailbone has been separated from the hide all the way up to that point. And then to get the tailbone out, we're going to twist it. So what you want to do is, I've come all the way up to where I can feel the end of the tailbone is right here. It's right in there. What I'm going to do is twist. So I'm going to muckle on to the end of this bucktail, my left hand, and use my right hand to twist. And then that will pop right out. And now the tailbone's out. So I'll give you guys a look at what that looks like here. So tailbone's out. I have the back side of my hide here. I did compromise it a little bit up here towards the tip, but it's not too horrible. So you can kind of see where I broke through the hide there a little bit. It's not a huge deal. That'll probably harden up just fine when I treat this. But this is an average size tail, and you can see just how wonderfully spread those fibers are. There's probably some 6-inch fibers in here, but I'm guessing a lot of those are probably 4 to 5 inch average. And this will make great, clousers, hollows, half and half flies, bass flies, and that's just an average tail. So that's how you take the tailbone out. What I'm going to do next, I'm not going to show you guys this in this video, but you have all this fatty tissue down here along where it connects to the rear end of the deer, where we cut all those big chunks of fat and flesh off with the hatchet the other day. Just take your sharp knife and clean this fat up. A lot of it will actually pull off, so you may not even need to do a whole lot of cutting. But there's generally a lot of fat and flesh down here around the base of the tail, because that's where it connects to the hide of the deer. So clean that up, and then you have this nice clean section in here where the tailbone was that we filleted open, and that's really what you got to treat. And you can use salt or borax from here. I prefer to use borax, but there's a treatment process before I use borax that I'll go over at some point later on down the road for you guys. It's basically a mixture of fluid that lowers the pH and helps kind of slough off all this fine little stuff that I can't get to with my knife. So that's kind of cool. It's something I found out on the interwebs. So that's taking a tailbone out of a deer tail. So if you've never done it, you're into tying, and you're into it like this, then give it a shot. It's fairly easy once you do a handful of them. Once you do 2 or 3 and mess up a couple, you'll figure out what not to do. So, but that's really the down and dirty of it. And then you have this nice piece of hide that you can treat and wash it, clean it, and use it for tying. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys liked that little video, and hopefully it was informational for some of you guys.